Hey everyone. So in this video, we're going to be looking at different types of bias and maybe giving an example for each one as well. So let's start off with our first one, which is voluntary response bias. Voluntary response bias is just like it sounds, but it's when people choose to be in the sample. This usually occurs with a convenience sample. So some examples of this might be an online survey. A company just puts a survey online or maybe puts a Twitter poll up, and people are choosing to participate in this survey. That would be voluntary response bias. The next type of bias that we want to look at is called undercoverage. An undercoverage bias occurs when some members of the population cannot be chosen or they are very unlikely to be chosen. So, for example, let's say that my population was the student body at Mason High School, and I wanted to survey students at Mason High School, maybe to find the average GPA. Well, if I only surveyed people from my classes, I would be missing out on some people. So if I randomly chose 5 people from each one of my classes, I would only be surveying juniors and seniors because that's all I have in my classes is juniors and seniors. I wouldn't get any sophomores or any freshmen. So that would be under coverage. The system is setting up a situation where some members of the population cannot be chosen or are very unlikely to be chosen. That would be under coverage. The third type of bias that we're going to look at is called non-response bias. Now, that's when an individual is selected to be in the sample, whatever sampling method is chosen, an individual is selected to be in that sample, but they choose not to participate in the survey or they cannot be reached. Now, this is different than voluntary response bias. They may choose not to participate, but it's not voluntary response bias because up here people are choosing on their own to be a part of the sample. For non-response bias, we have a perfectly fine selection process for our sample, but once that person has been selected, they choose not to participate in the survey or they have they have been chosen in a perfectly fine way, but they just can't be reached. So then we've got our last type of bias, and that is response bias. Now, response bias occurs when there's a pattern of inaccurate responses. So the responses themselves are just not true, and we see an inaccurate pattern of responses. This could be due to the wording of the question. Maybe the interviewer themselves is causing people to give inaccurate responses. Maybe individuals are deciding to lie about their response for some reason. Whatever it may be, if someone is giving inaccurate responses, whether it's because of the wording of the question, the interviewer themselves, or they decide to lie for some reason, that is called response bias. So there's our 4 types of bias that we want to look at. Hopefully this helps you understand at a deeper level, and hopefully you have a great day.